and welcome to another Legion Beta Guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Blood Decay. Quick little update as to how they're playing, if they've changed anything from the transition of Alpha to the Beta, and just taking a look at their legendaries, their set bonuses, things of that nature. So as far as leveling up the DK again, well, not leveling it up because he's still 100, but as far as just playing him, getting through the Broken Shore, getting through the artifact acquisition again, which, by the way, still an amazingly cool axe. Although my one issue with it is, if you look at your character, you'll usually look at them like this. So the skull's on the back. So you have to turn your camera here, and when it's sheathed, you can see it. When you're actually, fighting things, it makes sense that the skull be on the outside because you're swinging and all that. It just kind of looks weird, and I don't know if maybe it's just me that feels this way. But when I look at my character and I see the skull on the other side, it makes me think that the model's on backwards, even though it technically makes sense for it to be on that side. I don't know. It's probably just me. I'm a little bit weird. But anyways, taking a look at the Blood Decay, I still basically feel the same way that I've been feeling about them. They seem to have a lot of really good tools in their talent tree to go ahead and deal with situations. For example, I still think Bloodworms is pretty cool. It's not giving me as much healing as I thought it would, but at the same time, I don't really have a lot of crit. I'm at, 15% crit. That's not really much. Heartbreaker, giving Heartstrike more runic power is still nice. Exsanguinate, I feel like it does more damage, but it still doesn't really heal you for much. Even though technically it's supposed to be doing equal amounts of both. I still feel like a lot of their talents have good choices, like the choice between having Blood Tap or Anti-Magic Barrier. I still like the choices between Mark of Blood actually doesn't feel that great when you're using it. Probably maybe it's only going to be good in raid bosses, but Mark for Blood maybe needs a little bit of a buff. I do like the choices between Tombstone and Red Thirst. I like having the choices of Foul Bulwark versus Rune Tap, so a passive versus an active. And I think that all in all, they have a very good, solid foundation and idea for the way that the Blood Decay works. It's just the very specifics that don't quite add up, such as Bone Storm being very, very weak and using up all of your runic power, not feeling good. The fact that Deathstrike feels neutered, absolutely neutered. I feel like I don't get healed at all. I feel like, if anything, it just puts a little bit of a blood shield on me, sure, but it's not. It you won't pop yourself back up the way you used to unless you're using Vampiric Blood. And Vampiric Blood is your big shield wall. So having it on a small cooldown and having it be able to be reduced by things like Red Thirst and some artifact traits, like that's really important. But it feels like they took the amazingness of Deathstrike and they put all that healing into consumption, which is on a 45-second cooldown, but it doesn't give you a blood shield. So it almost feels like this is really should be named to Blood Shield Strike, and this should be Death Strike. It feels weird. It's a little bit of a disconnect. If you've been playing a DK for a long time, you're definitely going to feel that weakness in the strike. But I mean, if we're being completely honest, all the tanks feel this way. All the tanks have lost so much of their defensive capabilities in the name of making healer tank gameplay better, in the name of making it so that they're more intertwined and more reliant on each other. But it does put you in a situation where if you've been playing tanks for a while and you're used to being able to be really strong and being able to deal with situations by yourself, you might find yourself not having as easy of a time. And at least at least Death Knights can heal themselves. Playing the Guardian Druid, as much as they have so many different tools and such good mitigation and all these really cool things, admittedly they don't have a lot of healing. Their Frenzied Regen is actually really, really weak. You need a couple artifact traits to make it stronger. But yeah, I mean, Death Knights, they're not, the class isn't Deathstrike, it's Death Knight. Death Knight at least has the chance of using Vampiric Blood all the time if you really need that healing, which I kind of admittedly do like. And mixing that in with Red Thirst, you get Vampiric Blood a lot. You really, really do. I especially love Blood Mirror and the fact that you're redirecting damage. It's essentially it's a 20% damage reduction on yourself, but it's not so cut and dry and simple. It has a thematic tie to it, and it's that you're redirecting that 20% damage to someone else. So I like it's a small thing, but that small thing makes the class fantasy, which is what Blizzard's been saying, it makes it so much better when you tie it into things like that. So ultimately, I do think that Blood DKs are in a good position. They have a lot of choices for mitigation. They have Tombstone that lets you take all your Bone Shield charges into a nice absorbed shield. You have things like Rune Tap still existing, which just reduces all damage taken by 25% for 3 seconds at the cost of 1 rune, which is not as restrictive anymore because you have so many different runes. LVUI still needs to kind of figure out what they're doing with the runes and everything. So there's obviously this is beta, everything's not perfect. Yeah, I can't see my runes here, but I can see them when I'm playing. The little thing in the middle comes up. But overall, I still think that they're pretty good. Their damage seems a little bit weak. Um, Deathstrike still feels a little neutered. I still believe with all my heart that Death's Caress is the most pointless thing in the world, and that the only reason this spell exists is so that when you take Soul Gorge and it stops Blood Boil from applying Blood Plague, that then you have a reason to use it. Because Blood Boil does baseline almost 20,000 damage and then puts Blood Plague. This does 5. They both cost... No, this costs 1 rune. This doesn't. So this costs you a rune, gives you some runic power, does 5k, and this straight up just doesn't, and it has 2 charges and it's up all the time. Basically, if you're not going to Talon to Soul Gorge, you're not going to use Death's Caress. Even as a ranged pulling tool, I feel like it's just weak sauce. I wouldn't want to waste a rune on it. So, as far as talking about Soul Gorge, runic power does seem to regenerate really slowly, and I see what they're doing with Soul Gorge, as I said in my updated impressions. I just don't like the way it actually works out. It feels awkward, it feels weird. You kind of have to put your diseases up on a bunch of things using Death's Caress, and that takes fucking forever. And then you have to go back to your main target, and at the same time, you need to be keeping up Bone Shield, you need to be keeping up Deathstrike. And then right as it's about to expire, then you use Soul Gorge, and okay, now you're regenerating runes really fast. Or you could just cut all that shit out and just use Rapid Decomposition, which is just going to increase your rune regeneration by 20%. So it's really going to be a mathematical thing as to at what point Soul Gorge is better than this, because you want to be in death and decay almost all the time either way. So is it really better than Rapid Decomposition when you're resetting Death and Decay and you can have it up almost all the time, whether it takes Soul Gorge? I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's going to come up to the math. But I can tell you that playing with Soul Gorge feels weird. Playing with Rapid Decomposition feels fine. But anyways, going into what the point of this video is. We're going to be talking about loot. And the first thing we're going to take a look at... I'm not going to really pay too much attention to this Deathlord's Battle Plate. I'm not convinced that these set bonuses are even going to be used very often because they just come from the Order Hole campaign. And there's a good chance you're just going to be getting Dungeon Blues and things. It's just going to be better. So we're going to look at the tier set. And the tier set is the Dread Rune Battle Plate. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at it. It's pretty cool. It's very Arthas-like. It's the purple variation. They have an amazing red and blue one. Like I think the mythic one is straight up like Arthas, but with gold instead of the silver points in his body. Very fantastic tier set. I have to say it's probably one of my favorite Death Knight ones. And actually, let me just keep that up on the screen just for a visual appeal. So the 2 set is Heartstrike and Marrowrend generate 25% increased runic power. Great. What's the thing I've been talking about a lot recently on the Blood Decay is they need better runic power regeneration. They don't have runic corruption baseline like Frost and Unholy does. They don't have anything baseline that's going to just increase their runic power regeneration. So as a 2 set, that's nice, very stable, very normal 2 set bonus to give. And I think it's great. You're definitely going to want to go ahead and take that. And then your 4 set is Deathstrike has a 25% chance to generate a rune. So again, it's the first tier. Very, very safe options. Nothing that's going to change up your gameplay too much, except that after you use Deathstrike, you're going to want to pay attention to see if you've generated a rune. You're not going to want to spam it when you have full runic power, or full runes, I should say. And it's just going to give you that nice little extra bonus, because as you know, if you play a Blood DK, your resource system, since they've come out in Wrath, if you play a DK, your resources feed into each other. It's a cycle. Runes go into runic power, goes into runes. That's how they've worked from the very beginning, and they've actually probably had the most... they were the first class to have like a dynamic resource or double resources, and it was very intrinsically tied to everything that they did. So it's pretty good, I have to say. As a 4 set, you're definitely going to want to go ahead and get all of this. It's safe. It's not too crazy, but it feels good. I think it's going to be a very good 4 set, and it's good to know about that. It's going to help one of their major complaints that I have about them right now, which is just their resource generation. But now, let's get into the legendary discussion. So, what are we looking at here? You have the shackles. You know what? I'm not going to try to say these things because these words are ridiculous. It's a wrist that is specifically to Death Knights, and with Deathstrike refunds 25% of runic power spent if it heals you for more than 10% of your maximum health. So for me, this sounds like it could be pretty cool. Again, it's feeding into the resource cycle, which again is one of the things I've been saying that the blood DKs need a little bit of help on, a little bit of tweaks. But if you have this, essentially when you use Deathstrike, it's going to heal you for a minimum of 7% of your max health. This requires a minimum of 10%. And it goes up by 30% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds. So it's going to take a little bit of know-how, a little bit of getting the feeling for how it works and everything. But essentially, once you get it down, you take a big hit, you Death Strike after it, you heal up for more than 10% of your health, and you're going to get, let's see, 25% of 40. Gee, dear God. Okay, I'm going to math this guys for you because I don't want to do this wrong. 25%. So 10? You get 10 rooting power back. I guess that's nice. It's probably not that powerful. It's probably just like a nice little bonus. So I really wouldn't worry about this too much. But maybe I did my math wrong. Maybe it'd be a little bit better. It seems like a very safe type of legendary to make. Not too strong, but nice. Then you have a waste that makes Heart Strike reduce the remaining cooldown on Vampiric Blood by 3 seconds. And now we get to the fucking overpowered shit. Okay. So, I've already said this before. Having Vampiric Blood up makes you feel super tanky. It doesn't reduce the damage you take, it just increases your maximum health by 30%, but it increases your healing received by 30%. So obviously if you're in a raid, if you're in a dungeon, you have a healer. That healer's healing you, hopefully. You are healing yourself. A lot of your abilities do healing. Your Blood Plague does healing on you. So when you have this up, you feel very, very powerful. And you already have a talent that reduces the cooldown on it by 2 seconds every 10 runic power you spend. So if you then combine that with Heart Strike, which you're using all the time, also reducing it by 3 seconds, you're talking about already with this and that talent, I don't think it'd be out of the realm of possibility to say you have an almost 50% uptime on Vampiric Blood, which is fucking ridiculous. That is your shield wall. That is your big dick cooldown. That is the big thing that's going to keep you alive, where Brewmasters have Fort Brew and Prot Warriors have shield wall. The Prot Warriors have other things, but kind of the analogy there. That seems incredibly overpowered. And you're going to want to get this. If it takes too long to get it, I'm so fucking sorry. But if you're a DK, you have to go ahead and get this because it's too strong. Too strong. You need this. Then you have the Acarus Drapes. Increases the duration of anti-magic shell by 100%, and any damage it absorbs heals you. So this just makes your really good spell even better. Your anti-magic shell is a minute cooldown now. It's not 45 seconds. It's going to absorb magic damage as it always does. It's going to prevent the application of harmful effects, and you get to generate some runic power. It doesn't generate as much as it used to in the past because they wanted to cut down on that cheesing. They don't want it to be something that you use for runic power. They want it to be something used for defending yourself. Now, of course, I personally really, really like the talent that makes Anti-Magic Shell also increase your maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds, because that makes Anti-Magic Shell be useful in more than just a magical situation. It gives you a chance to be used in a physical type thing, and it also lets you have even better magic mitigation because your health is going up. So it's going to work still for magic, and it's going to work for physical damage. But this is basically going to make it so you absorb you have an even longer duration, not on the physical health portion, but just on the reducing magic damage. And when you absorb that damage, it's going to heal you. So it just makes what's good even better. I think it'll be a fantastic thing to have. You'll definitely want to have this, but comparing it to the Vampiric Blood one, the Vampiric Blood one is 10 times better. But this is still good. If you get this as a drop, you're not going to hate it. You're going to wish you got this one, but you're not going to be all like upset about it. So still a good legendary. Way better than the wrist still, I would say. Then you have some feet, and these feet increase your movement speed by 100% of your haste. So, DKs have always had the issue of having pretty shitty mobility. Admittedly, that has been helped because they have Wraithwalk, which is a nice little sprint that puts them into a Ghost Leoric animation. It's a decent amount of movement speed. I talented into having it last longer, so it doesn't last very long, and it's a nice little movement speed buff. It's not huge, but it's nice to have. This is going to depend completely on whether you have a lot of haste. If you gear for haste, these boots are probably going to be really nice because you're going to have a lot of passive movement speed. But if, for example, they math everything out and, oh, haste is the worst stat for blood DKs, you don't want to have it, then you're going to feel like this is kind of pointless. But then again, this is a warrior paladin death knight item. So this is one of those very broad ones that aren't very specific to just you. As you can tell, the accurate drapes, it's anti-magic shell, which means all three Death Knight specs can use it. But then you're talking into Heartstrike with Vampiric Blood, that's Blood DK. And then you're talking about Deathstrike, that I don't think, if I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think that Unholy and Frost have Deathstrike anymore. If they do, it'll probably be useful for them as well. But you can see here that there's legendaries that affect everyone, legendaries that affect specific classes, and then legendaries that affect specs. Overall, this could be good, but it depends on whether haste is good for your spec or not. Do you have the neck that we've been looking at all of these videos? It's just going to give you an absorb shield for 25% of your max health for 30 seconds. I've already talked about this. Essentially, when you're not tanking, it'll be able to proc. When you are tanking, it's not going to be as useful because obviously you're going to be getting hit. It could be situationally good, but ultimately I don't think it's really meant for tanks. And obviously that also extends to this CC ring, which is just going to give you increased move speed when you CC something, and you're not going to really be doing that as often. And you're not really going to need 70% increased move speed. Remember that you can only have one Legion Legendary equipped at the beginning of the game. Mythic raids and dungeons, you won't be able to use them at first. Through the expansion, you'll be able to equip more, and you'll be able to have them in raids and stuff. But you don't want to use up your one slot by this ring. Definitely not. Then you have the Radical or Bone Leg Plates. Bone Shield increases your maximum runic power by 60. So, this will be good in a situation where you're AoE tanking. It feels like a lot of the tanks, when they're AoE tanking, is when the resources just flood in. It's when they have a bunch of options. It's when they're able to feel like they used to feel. And I hate saying that, but you don't feel like the old tank that you used to be until you're AoE tanking. And when you're AoEing and you have your Blood Plague on everything and it's generating you a bunch of healing and you're heart striking everything in the fucking universe and you're getting a shit ton of runic power, this will be nice because having Bone Shield up increases the amount of maximum runic power you can hold on to, but ultimately it's not going to be that big of a deal because when you're tanking a single target, having an extra cap on your runic power is nice, but you're going to be using it so often, I don't really feel like this is going to be as useful. It's a nice little bonus, less nice than the drapes that give you the anti-magic shell 100% duration, but I mean it's an okay legendary, I would say. And then you have a ring that causes you to deal 5% more damage and receive 5% more healing when standing in your Death and Decay. Now, the interesting thing about Death Knights is that I think Leech and Versatility are going to play pretty important roles in the spec. A lot of your things do damage and healing. A lot of your stuff drains. So when it says drains and it says damage from a target or whatever, that means it's going to heal you for that same amount. It's very much a vampiric type of class and spec. So having the 5% more damage and 5% more healing pretty much feeds into each other. And you're already going to be standing in your Death and Decay all the time. You want to have this down all of the time. Let me say that again. You stand in Death and Decay all the time because your Heart Strike will then hit all targets. Standing in your Death and Decay can also increase your rune regeneration if you go for the talent. So Death and Decay is already a big deal. It procs all the time. You can have multiple layers of it sitting down because you proc it from, I believe it's Crimson Scourge. Let's see, Crimson Scourge. Yeah, your auto attacks on targets infected with Blood Plague have a chance to cause your next Death and Decay to cost no runes to reset its cooldown. So it's a big part of your rotation. It's a big part of the things that you have to pay attention. You want Blood Plague on everything all the time, and you write Death and Decay down when it's off cooldown. So I see this as a very powerful ring. You're going to definitely want to go ahead and get it. It's just going to make you better at doing what you do. It's going to let you receive more healing from healers and yourself. It's just going to make you better. As far as all of these legendaries go, you want this waste above all of them because having Vampiric Blood on a shorter cooldown just is, oh God, it's so fucking good, guys. You have no idea. The waist is going to be an important one to have. The back is going to be important. The wrist, probably not as much. Waist, back, and maybe the legs. If I'm completely being honest, I don't see myself ever using these legs unless they're like the only legendary I have. And then the ring. I would definitely say waist, back, and ring. Ring and the back are kind of on an equal scale. The waist is far, far and above beyond all the other ones. But as you can see here, there's going to be a situation. Well, let me correct that. When we were looking at the Vengeance Demon Hunter, there were situations where you would have one, you'd want to switch it out for the other one. You could really think of situations where you want to switch them out. If I had this waist, I would never take this off. This would be on my character maybe through the whole expansion even, because it's that powerful. Having your big dick cooldown more often cannot, it's almost impossible to mathematically, give it a value. It's just so good. And you use Heartstrike all the time. Like all the fucking time. This waste is going to be really, really powerful. You want to have this. This is a big deal. The back is probably going to be situational if there's a lot of magical damage going on. The ring is another one that you just pretty much want to have on all the time. So I would definitely say that once you get to equip 2 or more, you're going to want the waist and the ring. And then anything else is just going to be situational at that point. But the waist is ridiculously powerful. Remember, Vampiric Blood 3 seconds, Heartstrike every time. You have Red Thirst on, fuck it, man. You're going to be having that Vampiric Blood up all the time. But yeah, overall, Blood Decay still in a very good spot. Rotationally, they could use a little more runic power. It just sucks because it seems like they're going to be balanced around their 4 set, so until you get it, you're going to feel a little bit weaker. Deathstrike is like a neutered thing. It doesn't feel as good. But as far as tanking and being able to survive things, they still have the options for a lot of damage reduction. The more complex and the less passive talents that you take, the more you have on-demand damage reduction for important moments, the more max HP options that you have, and just being healed by healers and everything, they're in a good spot. I would honestly say that. Blood DKs are in a good spot. They're not the strongest, but they're not the weakest. The only big issue that I would say is reverting Deathstrike to a heal that heals you for a certain amount of a certain percentage of the damage you took in the last couple seconds. They had some issues with that in things. I believe it was a Fire Lance where it was really, really showing that it was not a good system. Hopefully, it doesn't nip them in the butt, doesn't bite them in the ass. But I think they will be okay. Remember that they're the only class besides Vengeance Demon Hunters that have access to Gorfian's Grasp, and it's a very, very powerful cooldown. And they still have Death Grip. They still have a lot of really cool abilities and things. They've lost a lot of buttons, but again, you can get a lot of them back by taking different talents. Ultimately, guys, I think they're in an okay situation, and that fucking waste is going to be ridiculously powerful for Bloody Cage. You want to aim for that first. Anyways, guys, my name is Tal. This has been my quick look at the Blood DK legendary items, set bonus, quick little update on what it's like being playing, going through the broken shore, everything. Pretty good, still standard. Nothing is big. Nothing has changed really from the transition of alpha to beta. It's just letting more people in. But I hope you guys like this, and if you do, subscribe to the channel. You'll be able to see more of this content. I believe that the next one that we're going to be doing, because we had to do Druid, then we did Demon Hunter, then we did DK, next one is going to be Warrior, and that's going to be coming out tomorrow. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. See you around.